Hey YouTube, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about tier lists. So you guys probably saw Strive actually just got delayed, but when we just had the Strive beta, everyone put out their early tier lists, right? And every single content creator, doesn't matter who you are, you had to put out the tier list because the tier list get out of you the, high number of views. But it begs the question, are early tier lists useful? And as a general fighting game player, can you actually use these? Are these actually useful? We tried to figure that out. And so everyone put together a tier list. Here's a couple of the better tier lists that I saw. One was from a couple JP pros and one was from Deb. She was the Xrd Evo winner a couple years back. I kind of thought to myself, well, I'm not a Strive expert. I probably don't know more about Strive than either of these people that made tier lists. So I'm not gonna make my own tier list. I'm gonna go back and look at history to see how useful tier lists have been for week ones. So let's talk about Grand Blue Versus. So there was a beta for Grand Blue Versus, happened May 20th to 21st. There's no tier list. I don't know why, I guess people weren't out for clout back then. But I couldn't find any tier list from the beta. But the game released about 8 months later, people published a crap ton of tier lists, right? Up until the first significant balance patch, the game was pretty much the same. So we had about a little over 2 months to determine where the meta of the game was. This is Dogra's tier list from about right before the balance patch. I would call this an accurate tier list. Based on what we know now, Fairy and Lancelot were probably the two best in the game back when the game first released. They both keep getting nerfed and they both still remain top, just to kind of shows you how good of the characters they are. Catalina and Gran, again, they're both very strong when the game released as well. And yeah, in general, this tier list is just very accurate. Even characters like Zeta and Percival, this is before they got buffed, so it does seem like they're a little bit low compared to modern day tier lists, but you guys have to think that this was before Percival and Zeta actually had functioning anti-airs. This is before they had, better hitboxes on some of their normals and a couple other things, right? Same thing with Vasaraga. Yeah, Vasaraga had so many buffs. So let's look back at week one. And I pulled a few random tier lists. I wasn't trying to be biased, try to pick the worst tier list. Every tier list was bad, right? So I tried to pick a couple well-known names. Flo published his tier list week one. Cloud 805, same thing. Cloud 805 was actually grinding this game super hard when the game first dropped. And then I have a tier list on the right by, I'll just use the initials CB, but this tier list is so bad, I had to make him anonymous, you know what I'm saying? But there's a couple, there's a few underlying things that we can notice, right? Lance, Fairy, Cat, and Gran were all top in the previous patch. And, the S tiers are totally off on this. Everyone has Matera as top. I think the thing was Matera is really easy, and she had she's a zoner, and zoners are generally easier to play, and so I think people just overrated her when the game first released. I think the other thing is she had like a really easy hop, and I don't think people realized like you just literally die if you hop in the wrong situation. And I don't think people quite got that when the game was released, that you can just stop her from hopping and then she can't really run her offensive game. Not to mention her mix-up is kind of fake too, which people thought her mix-up was really scary when the game first dropped. So you have all these little factors that actually made Matera look higher than she actually is, right? And you see, Luane's pretty high on some of these tier lists. Catalina's like bottom 2. Catalina was crazy. Catalina was so good. But I think because she wasn't flashy, people didn't think she was good. People thought Luane was really strong at the start because he had Yggdrasil Super, and people don't know how to deal with the Yggdrasil Super. The tier lists are all over the place, right? And even Lancelot, Lancelot was literally one of the most broken characters in the game. Probably better than Belial when he first came out, right? And from CB, give Lancelot and Vasaraga some love. That just cracked me up. Yo, Che Benji. Yeah, CB is actually Che Benji. I pulled that from him. Sorry to expose you. It's really bad. Bro, Lancelot bottom 2? I can't. But the point I'm trying to make is people had some really whack opinions. It's not just Che. Actually, everyone had Charlotte at top. S tier Zeta when she released was so bad. She literally could just jump in on her for free because her 2H just had a crazy hurt box for whatever reason. Crouch medium that you guys know is really annoying to deal with, that was a lot worse. So her neutral was just pretty trash when the game first came out. So I do have to throw myself under the bus too. I can't just throw those people under the bus. I have to share what I did as well. So here's my tweet. This is a week after the game released. So Charlotte, Gran, and Fairy are top tier. Fairy still has more optimization to go. Could be top 1. which is true. Fairy is probably top 1 or 2. Metera top, unless you can shut down her command jump down, which is actually true. Will still be relevant in meta since she has some strong matchups, which is kind of true, right? She was probably mid-tier when the game first released. Lil is meh, not because you could dog Juju's a super, but because his neutral is trash, which is 100% facts. I'm just saying, my takes when the game first came out were actually pretty good. Most slept on character was Lancelot, Anime Rashiv, Textile Explorer. Another fact, Vasaraga is good, Bowen is a counter pick in some matchups. Alright, this one was just a cop-out. I had no fucking clue about Vasaraga, I'm not gonna lie, guys. And that was kind of my cop-out, but it turned out Vasaraga was pretty bad when he first released. After week 1 though, the tier list started to look a lot better. You know, top 4 is Grand, Fairy, Lancelot, and Catalina. You get pretty close to that, right? I would say Fairy is definitely too low on this kind of tier list. I don't think people, especially Japan, didn't realize how strong Fairy could be. But other than that, this is generally pretty accurate, right? Other than having Fairy pretty low. I'd say, you know, Lance that obviously needs to be an S tier too. You can just see the difference that 1 week makes, right? And then the first truly accurate tier list I saw was a week 3. Noble put it out. So in this case study for Grand Blue, it took 3 weeks for an accurate tier list to pop up, where you actually have Fairy and Lancelot at the top. You have Luane, you have Vasaraga. I actually like Ladiva's placement as well. I don't think Ladiva's bottom 4. On launch, Ladiva is probably better than Percival. And there's still some like not so accurate tier lists kind of mixed in. But once we got to 1 month, pretty much every tier list looked like this. Mike and Ike, a strong player in the US, he did a month 1 tier list and it looked almost identical to Noble's tier list, right? Some random dude on Twitter, I don't even know the dude, the dude got 1 like on his tier list. But the point I'm trying to make is that it was accurate. I use this random dude on Twitter as like a example of the hive mind of Grand Blue versus, right? This is what your average player thinks. It's actually accurate, right? At least for Grand Blue's sake, it took a month for the opinions to proliferate that everyone kind of agreed that, hey, Lance and Fairy are the strongest characters in the game. So what are our key takeaways, right? I'd say they're correlated with the true result. So even if you go back to week 1, in general, like Vasaraga's low, that was true. Vasaraga wasn't good when he came out. It's not like you just stuck random characters on the dartboard. It's better than random guessing, right? In general, Charlotte is high where she should be. Fairy's high where she should be. In general, it's somewhat correlated with the actual result, but it's obviously not correct. The hive mind overrates and underrates characters together. You guys saw that Metera was overrated on every single list week 1. And so there's definitely like a common element, like everyone thinks that this is the case. And so people kind of reflect ideas off of each other. I would say that my early impressions are that much better than everyone else's, but it's not true. I cheated, right? I didn't actually make a tier list. I didn't guess on like all these characters I don't know. I only talked about half the cast. So by that definition, only talking about the characters that you know about are generally going to be more accurate. So if you guys see early impressions of Strive, for example, they're probably going to be more accurate, in my opinion, than just someone putting out a random tier list. And yeah, obviously more time equals more accurate tier list. Something of a tier, like 1 month for consistent accuracy for something like this. So that takes us back. What do we do with these Strive tier lists, right? So here's some of my predictions for Strive based on what we have for Grand Blue. But yeah, I think you'll see some characters I don't know if it's 3 to 4 characters, but I think you'll see some sleeper characters are going to be out there for Strive or any other game. I think you're going to have some overrated characters, just like Metera was overrated or Lance was a sleeper character. Why does this happen? I think it's just a change in tech. You know, I think people realize like, hey, you can get 50-50s off Lance knockdowns. Hey, I can anti-air Metera's hop pretty easily. So people are going to have a better understanding of the game, and they're going to have a better understanding of the characters, and they're going to have an understanding of what tools are strong and what tools aren't. And also the other thing is like the meta is going to change, right? Like certain characters are going to become more popular, some characters are going to become less popular, and the characters that counter the strong characters are going to be perceived as better. And that happens in pretty much any game. I also think if you average the opinions of people, you kind of get the bad outliers out of the way. So even if you go back to week 1, if you kind of average out those 3 tier lists, Lance being bomb 2 is no longer a thing, right? Because you've diluted that bad opinion with other more stable opinions. You know, even though these tier lists are pretty similar, you do have some differences. Take for example, May, A+ tier in Deb's tier list, C tier in the Japanese Pro tier list, right? So there are some differences. Here's a couple other tier lists. These actually differ a lot more. You have Jay Wong and Leffen's tier list. Giovanna is bottom 2 in Jaywong's tier list, right? In the Japanese tier list, Giovanna's top 6. In Deb's tier list, Giovanna's top 5. Who do you believe? Well, it's pretty hard, right? And I mean, we're still not sure, and there's going to be a lot of tech developed. But I think the safest route is to just average all the tier lists together. And this is kind of what you get. And my first impression was, hey, this seems sort of right. But at the same time, it's just a collection of public opinion. All the factors I talked about earlier, like the tech that needs to be discovered, the meta that needs to be evolved, figuring out the character's strengths and weaknesses, and finding out more information about the game in general is going to change these placings no matter what. So there's only so much averaging can do. It is worth it most likely when the game releases, if it releases in this state. I bet Pot, Ram, and Soul will probably, at least 2 of them will probably be top tier, but only time will tell. So I want to give some closing thoughts. This is actually a classic, right? So this happens not just in Grand Blue, not just in Strive. People have opinions, no matter what, right? And honestly, I think opinions are good. I think they're fun. I think they lead to discussion, and I think it's really awesome to look back and see how well you did. So Jayuna had a pretty famous tweet. Gordeau is super overrated. This is referring to BB Tag. He won't exist at high level play. Screen cap this. And yeah, the Evo champ that year won with Gordeau. Gordeau is probably the #1 character in the game. So don't take anyone's opinions like as gospel. You know, if you have a character and people say they're bad, or Jayuna saying that Gordeau is super overrated, but you really like Gordeau, stick with the character, right? Yeah, I think also tier lists are a really good conduit for discussion. So if you're just trying to learn about characters, you're trying to learn about why someone's strong, why someone's weak, you know, these kind of tier lists are a good way to describe that. So like I said, they're good, but don't take them as the full truth. You'd be surprised the number of people that are like, oh, I heard Chip is bad. Should I not play this character? And it's like, bro, it's only day 2. But yeah, if you guys like what you see and you want to support the channel, please consider subscribing. I stream on Twitch, try to do every Monday, Wednesday, Friday around 6:30 p.m. but it's kind of inconsistent. But I'll be streaming Grand Blue, I'll be streaming Strive when it comes out, some BB Tag, some other fighting games. Pretty much just all fighting games that I stream. So if you guys are interested, check me out on Twitch, and thanks for watching. I saw you put like 3 or 4 tier lists out, Shay. I thought it was pretty funny. I was like, damn, this guy's going ham with the tier list. I don't think it matters who you are. I mean, like, even in Strive, I think one of the characters, like Soul, Pot, or Ram, I think one of those characters will be bottom half of the cast, even if they leave the game as it is now. That's just my prediction.